right, well, welcome to the Tesol introduction course, which will last for about 40 minutes. My name is Christian, and I am the lead trainer for American Tesol Institute in Mongolia, in cooperation with Jet School of English, which is where we are now. My name is very difficult. That's because I am Dutch, but people just call me course, as in Tesol course, only spelled differently. Now, I hope today I can explain to you a little bit what the Tesol course is about and what will be taught during the 6-week course. Let me first give you some information about ATI. ATI is short for American Tesol Institute. Very shortly, the headquarters of ATI is in Tampa, Florida in the United States. We don't deal directly with them, we deal with the head office in Asia, which is in Bangkok, Thailand. We operate in Asia since 2007. I was the first ATI trainer in Thailand in 2007, and I've been in most of the ATI countries, which is kind of fun. We do on-site courses in the United States, India, Thailand, Nepal, and China. We deliver internationally recognized certificates. It's a certificate that means you are allowed to teach. It's like a teaching permit in different countries. Do not confuse this with you can get a job anywhere in the world. You also have visa restrictions and all these kind of things. So just to make sure that that is clear. And we started in Mongolia in July 2013. So it's very new still. But you did not come here to learn about ATI, you came here to learn about Tesol. So in a nutshell, what will you learn? A basic understanding of language teaching. Does anybody here have teaching experience? Yes? How many years?
For 10 years.
For 10 years? Anybody else? Yes?
3 years.
For 3 years? Excellent. Any teaching experience? No? That's okay. Just graduated?
3 years.
For 3 years? Excellent. Now, for the people who have already got experience, many of the things might sound familiar, but we're going to look at it in a different way. For the people who have no language teaching experience, we're going to start at the basics and move up, make it broader. But we're also going to create a different outlook on language teaching. We're going to look at language teaching in many different ways and see what we're doing now and how we can improve that. I come back to that a little bit later. We're going to work on confidence in the classroom, especially for the teacher with no experience. The first teaching experience can be quite scary. Everybody's looking at you, right? And you get a little bit nervous. Also, in this course, you will learn how to teach in English. When you teach, do you use Mongolian or English? Both? Yeah? Now, in this course, you can only use English. You are not allowed to speak Mongolian in the classroom, even if you teach absolute beginners. Now, this might make a very seasoned, experienced teacher still a little bit nervous. We're going to practice that and create that confidence before we go out into the classrooms. We're going to look at self-critical analysis. Teachers, and I'm talking in general, this is not personal of course, but teachers often blame students for everything that goes wrong. The students are lazy, he didn't do his homework, he can't do that. But we're going to also look at ourselves. What am I doing that creates this situation and how can I improve that? We're going to get the necessary tools to teach each skill. Meaning, we're going to look at each skill individually, listening, reading, writing, speaking, and grammar, and we're going to look at different ways to teach them, different methods to teach them, but also how we can combine the skills together to create a more interesting lesson. And also the necessary skills to use the tools. We're going to look at the tools that teachers use, and that's very simple, from the whiteboard to your curriculum. We're going to look at different books, at the internet, what is right and what is wrong. We're going to look at extra materials such as projectors and how we can use them, when is it right and when is it not right. Can you see this picture? It's What do you see? It's an African country. It's a classroom, yeah? Now, what is missing in this classroom? Desks, chairs, board, basically everything, except students. Now, how would you teach this class? Now, the Tesol course is an international course. We teach it here in Mongolia, where we have all materials, but it's also taught in Central Africa, where teachers go out and meet this. We're going to teach you how you are going to be able to teach a class like this. The good thing is, if you can teach this, you can basically teach anything. All right? We're going to look at how can we, with the minimum tools, still create a good lesson with a proper academic focus, with objectives, not just keeping them busy, but actually doing something. And from there on, we're going to build up and expand our lessons, expand our materials, and expand our range. Now, learning a language. Acquisition versus learning. Do you know what the word acquisition means? Obtaining, yes, excellent. No, acoustic is not a real word, no. Acquisition means the natural way of learning things. Learning things without knowing it. Can you tell me how you learned Mongolian? Listening to your parents, talk to your parents, yeah? And? And sing. But can you really remember how you learned Mongolian? No. At one point, you can speak Mongolian. Now, learning is a very conscious way. Right? We go to class, we pay money to go to class, we expect a teacher, we have books, we go on the internet to learn. Now, what are the differences, mainly differences between acquisition and learning? We're going to look at that. Now, acquisition is like L1. L1 is short for your first language. Like we just discussed, you don't know. It just happens. Learning is very unlike your first language. You do everything for it. Here it's an intuitive process, a very difficult word, but you do it on intuition. It just happens. You hear something and you're like, hey, yeah, that's how it works. Here is very conscious. We read in books. What is the grammatical structure? How does that work? Here you speak without thinking. You want to say something, you say it. Now we all know, students here, especially in Mongolia, they think a lot before they speak. Am I using the right words? Am I using the right grammar? I'm not sure. I'm not saying anything. All right? So students find it difficult to say because they think too much. Now here language is acquired in context. Context means your surroundings, the things that happen. So if I learn a new Mongolian word, oftentimes I learn it because I see it used. I see people in the shop saying something, I'm like, hey, that means how much does it cost? I can use that, right? And everything you learn, you can apply immediately. In learning, language is decontextualized. It's a nice word, decontextualized. It means the teacher will decide what you learn. The book will decide what you learn. Sometimes you learn things you will never ever talk about in real life. Right? That's the main difference. Here, formal teaching, having a teacher, doesn't help much, doesn't do much. And here, basically, it's all about the teacher. Is your teacher competent? Is your teacher qualified? Then your lessons will be good and the learning will be fun. Which of these two is better? Acquisition or learning? What? Acquisition?
They had to, all the people who want to go to America have to go to America or in the It's a good way, but it's very expensive.
It's expensive and it's time consuming. Now, there's no denying that acquisition is easy easier and better than learning. Because some people have studied English for 10, 15 years and still lazy. Right? Now, unfortunately, because we live in Mongolia, acquisition is not really possible. The Tesol course is trying to create lessons in which we combine learning with acquisition. Creating lessons in which acquisition will happen while we were also learning. Right? So there's a subconscious focus on language acquisition. Now, in the course, I'm going to tell you more about that and how that works, but it gives you an idea. Let me put them back on. Methodology. Many people, when they think about a training course for teachers, they think teaching methods. Right? If I know all teaching methods, I can do everything. Now, what is a teaching method? It's actually very simple. It's a way to get my students from A to B, and what I'm going to do in between. Now, in the Tesol course, we are going to discuss many methods, but not all of them, and some we will discuss very largely, and some we will discuss only briefly. We will mention them, tell them what they do, and that's it. Now, I'm going to show you two methods that are very important in our everyday life in language teaching, and that we will discuss very deeply in the test. The first one is grammar translation. The grammar translation is the oldest method. Right? It's the method that is still now commonly used in, I think, about 90% of the world as the primary way to teach a language. Now, does any of you speak Dutch? The language of Holland? No? I will teach you a little bit of Dutch. Okay? Now, just 4 sentences, that's it. I want to show you how the grammar translation method works. The first sentence is, I buy a car. In Dutch, it is, ik koop een auto. Repeat after me. Ik koop een auto. Ik koop een auto. Very good. Second sentence. You buy a book. Which in Dutch is, jij koopt een boek. Repeat after me. Jij koopt een boek. Now for you, this is not jij, this is jij in Dutch. Right? Number 3. He buys a bicycle. In Dutch, hij koopt een fiets. Repeat. Hij koopt een fiets. Hij koopt een fiets. Fiets. Excellent. Last one. We buy a house in Dutch is wij kopen een huis. Wij kopen een huis. Now, one more time, repetition. Ik koop een auto.
Ik koop een auto.
Excellent. Jij koopt een boek.
Jij koopt een boek.
Fantastic. Hij koopt een fiets.
Hij koopt een fiets.
Wij kopen een huis.
Wij kopen een huis.
Do you remember them?
Yeah.
Alright. Translate these 2 sentences into Dutch.
Wij kopen een fiets.
Excellent. Wij kopen een fiets. And the second one? Hij koopt een
Auto.
not kopen.
Hij koopt
Een auto. Absolutely. Here are the answers. Wij kopen een fiets. Hij koopt een auto. Now, it works, right?
Yeah.
In 3 minutes, I got you to learn some Dutch. Does this really work?
Yeah.
The thing is, the grammar translation method works up until a certain extent. We learn a lot about the language, how it works. We can see grammatical structures, right? You see here that the Dutch structure is very similar to the English, right? So when the structure is very different, it already becomes more complicated.
Yeah.
Secondly, I'm not really teaching you the language. I'm teaching you about the language. That's the reason why in Mongolia, people have studied English for 8-9 years, but they speak elementary English. They know a lot. You give them a grammar test and they'll be filling in all the gaps. But when it actually comes to speaking or using English, they can't. Unfortunately, in real life, a company will never ask, do you know English grammar? They will ask, can you speak English? They can ask, can you write in English? That's when we need the grammar. We don't need this just like this. It's too little. Now, does it mean we can never use it? Of course we can. Sometimes to explain things we can use it, but as a method in itself, it is outdated. Now, another method we're going to look at is not super new, but a lot newer than the one we do, is the PPP communicative method. Now, PPP communicative is more of the focus here is on communication, which is what language is, right? To be able to communicate. Now, what does PPP stand for? The first one stands for presentation. It means I'm presenting new language, a dialogue, a grammar point, reading, listening, up to you. Then, practice. In the practice part means you and maybe in groups or together with the teacher will, as a student, be practicing what we've just learned. And the last stage is production. That means now, I'm not doing anything. You need to do it. You now need to be able to make and produce that language yourself. You see, it's a pyramid shape. Why? They were building something. Now let's say the lesson takes 1 hour, yeah? Now the first part will take 10 minutes. It's the small. The second part, 20 minutes. And the third part, 30 minutes. Now it also means students will say a little here, the least, here, already a lot more. And in the last part, the students will do all the talking, all the work. And I, as a teacher, I facilitate. I make sure that everybody does it. But if they do it correct, I'm quiet. Unfortunately, most Mongolian teachers do 50 minutes of the 1 hour do this. Talk, talk, talk. In Mongolian, more Mongolian, always like, and more information. Then very little practice, no production. The thing is, this is where the learning happens. Here, they're like, oh yeah. But once they start doing it, that's how we memorize it. That's how we remember it. That's how we keep on doing it. So each lesson should have a production stage. We call that from a teacher-centered lesson, where the teacher does all the talking, which is very common in Asia, right? And in Mongolia. To go to a student-centered lesson, where I make sure that the students are the ones talking. Now, that is a bit of a difficult shift. This method can be used as a method for a whole lesson, but also for parts of a lesson. You can do 5 times PPP in one lesson. And we will discuss how it works and how to introduce it very, very detailed in the course itself. Do you have any questions so far? No? Lesson planning. Lesson planning is a very vital aspect of being a teacher. Right? Now, some people, when they plan a lesson, all they think about is, how am I going to fill the time? I've got 2 hours, what am I going to do? But that's not the correct question. Your first question should be your lesson objective. And the question is, what do I want my students to be able to do at the end of the lesson? Not, how am I going to fill the time? So the question is, where do I want my students to be? Building step by step, getting them higher. The second question is, how will I get my students to do that? What activities will help my students to get there? Right? Are the activities in the book? Do I need extra activities? Do I need more practice? Those kind of things. And that's it. No, not yet. Secondly, you need analysis. What do the students want? We can say it very simple. If you ask the students, what do you want to do? They'll probably say, play games.
Yeah.
Now, if all your students like to play games, then I can think, what game can I use to get this? Now, we cannot just play games, but if it works, we can make a lot of activities in a game or competition form, which will mean the student will find it more interesting. But also, what it's useful for. If I have 10 students, and all of them are senior executives at a company, and my topic is my last holiday. Now, it's not something that we use on a daily basis. I could also mean my last business trip. Same language, same grammar point, just a different topic, and now I've made it personal. They can relate to it. And the last thing, anticipated problems. What am I going to do in the lesson? What can go wrong? If I do this activity, what can go wrong? And immediately, how will I deal with that? How will I deal with the problems in my lesson? Now, if you do all these 4 things, you will have a good lesson, most likely, or at least know what you're going to do in the lesson. During the course, lesson planning is very important, and when you have to do lessons, you will have to write formal lesson plans. Of course, a lot more detailed information about this in the course. Teaching skills, we have 4 of them. Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Correct?
Yep.
Now they are connected somehow. Which 2 are connected? There's 2 pairs. Listening and speaking, and reading and writing. Right? That's how we say it. We can't listen, or we can't speak without listening, and we can't write without reading. But when it comes to learning, reading and listening is connected, and writing and speaking. Because reading and listening are receptive skills. The language comes to you. It is passive. I can just sit and have the language come to me. Writing and speaking are productive skills. The language comes from me. I need to make the language. Now, many students can do this quite easy. But here, we have a bigger problem. Alright? Now, you'll also notice that listening and reading lessons are very similar. Listen to the story, answer the questions. Read the story, answer the questions. However, writing and speaking are very, very different. In Mongolia, the main focus is here. Right? Learn to listen, learn to read, but we don't focus on this. However, if you can listen, doesn't mean you can speak. If you can speak, you can listen. No 2 ways about it. Right? So this is our end product. Ask a student, what do you want from your English lessons? They want to be able to speak English. You'll never hear them say, I want to be able to listen. You know what I mean? They'll either say, I want to learn how to speak properly, I want to learn how to write properly. And in that course we do this. In the Tesol course, we're going to look at different methods, different ways, different ideas to teach each skill, but also how to connect the skills together. And this is number 5. Grammar. Grammar isn't a skill, grammar is a function. In most countries, and also in Mongolia, this is the main focus. Students believe if I know grammar, I know the language. It's not true. Grammar alone teaches us nothing. I need to be able to do this and use grammar. That and use grammar. So we're going to look at how to teach grammar, how to simplify grammar, and how to connect grammar with the necessary skills. How can I go from listening, highlighting grammar, and put it in speaking? How can I go from reading to grammar and then put it in writing? Or you want to go crazy from listening to grammar to writing, why not? Or from reading to speaking, not a problem. The thing is, grammar alone is useless. Grammar comes from this. We can highlight grammar, we can learn grammar, and grammar is put, practiced, and used here, in those things. That is how it works. Now we're going to focus on that very much, because in countries like Mongolia, it takes a long time to change this situation. Classroom lunch. think if you've been a teacher for a long time, you must have felt like this at one point. Yeah? You just want to scream at them. Especially if you teach younger children or teenagers. You can't. Unfortunately. Sometimes it would feel very relaxing, but it doesn't work. Now, classroom management, what is that?
Manage the class, present lessons.
Most people say, right, making my students do what I want them to do. Now, that is part of it. Classroom management is a part managing your students. Indeed, getting them to do what you want them to do, making them behave. If you teach children, making them sit down, making them look at you, you know, like all these things. That's part of student management. But that's not what classroom management is. It goes a lot further. Teacher management. Are you prepared? Do you know what you're doing? You know those teachers walking in? They don't have a pen. Can I borrow your book? I left mine downstairs. Can I borrow your book? Now that means you are not prepared.
Yeah.
You are chaotic. Right? You seem like you don't care. How will your students respond if you don't even bring your own pen? How can you give a student a hard time for not having a pen if you've never had a pen? Right? You need to be prepared. That's the whole part. But it's also managing the time. If the lesson lasts for 1 hour, that means 1 hour, not 15 minutes, not 1 hour and 15 minutes. The main point is, if you manage your time, that means you have a backup plan. You have time left over, play a little game, do some reading. And if you feel like, hey, I can't start my next activity because I had no time, then you need to think of something else. We're going to do the next lesson or something like that. Time management is important. We'll talk about that. And managing the content. The content means what's in the lesson. Is it the correct material? Is it good for this age? Is it age appropriate? Is it culturally appropriate? I've spent 3 years in the Middle East. Now, very conservative society. You need to think about what you're going to teach, what words will come up, what is in these discussions. If you have all these things and you know what you're doing, then you have class control. If you manage to do all these things, then nothing in your lesson will go wrong. Now, this is not just you. There's many factors. We're going to talk about what can happen and how we're going to deal with it when it does happen. And we're going to look at each of these 4 different parts separately. So much about the content. Now we're going to look a little bit about how the course really works. The first thing is peer teaching. If, when you join the course, you will be taught several models. That means there are set lessons that you will have to learn to show that you are capable of producing a decent lesson. Now, I will demonstrate these models. We will talk about how we do it, why we do it, and then I say, okay, you teach it. Now, peer teaching means you will teach it in this class, with your classmates. Means you get practice. Practice before you go out. Right? You know what the steps are, you get the idea. You will also get feedback. I will tell you, and maybe some other students will also tell you, hey, listen, at this stage, this is excellent, very well done. And another point like, listen, here is where you started maybe, doing this, think about doing it that way. You also get to see other students doing the lesson. You'll be observing them. You can learn a lot from watching other people do it. As a teacher and the class is really rapid, you're like, hey, what did this teacher do? How can I avoid that in my own lesson? These 3 things together should give you the confidence to do it in a real classroom later on. We're coming to that, teaching practice. That's the real deal. This course doesn't have a written final exam for a very simple reason. If a teacher is capable of passing an exam that asks them how to teach, that is great. But teaching isn't done on paper, it is...
Oh, do you mind?
Sorry, it's too late. Yeah, sorry, I just... My God, I was totally in the zone and now it's gone. Teaching practice, I'll start again. That's the real deal, that's where it really happens. We are going out to real schools instead of this written exam. Why? Teaching is something you do, it's not something you know. I will be observing. We're going to different schools with different age groups. We have 5 observed teaching sessions. 2 of them in a primary school, a grade 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 of them in a high school, grade 7 to 11. And 1 of them in an adult or a college-like environment. You'll teach different types of lessons in each one. But a teacher, a good teacher, should be capable of teaching each age group without too much hassle. Doesn't mean you have to like it, but you should be able to do it. These observed teaching sessions are your final exam. You get oral and written feedback. I will tell you what I saw, and I will give you a paper that says this lesson is a pass or a fail, and so on and so forth. It's real classroom experience. These are not people in class that know what you're going to do. These are children that just want to teach you. And it's going to be like they're going to respond how real people would respond. It's mandatory, meaning you have to do all 5. If you miss one, you need to make up for it. Now, and don't worry, if one of your lessons ends up being unsatisfactory, or if you fail it, that doesn't mean you failed the whole course. It means you'll need to repeat that lesson at a different time, maybe with a different class, or even in a different school, but it has to be repeated. This way, we can assess from ATI if you have the necessary skills to go out and teach the class, having good objectives, having a good lesson plan, good demeanor, classroom management, and all those things. That's important. Are you qualified to do this? That might be a very good question. You should ask yourself the following questions. Number 1, can you fluently or near fluently converse in English? Before the enrollment, I usually speak with the students individually just to assess where you are. Now, can you understand me here? Yeah? That's already a good start. Because if you find it difficult to understand me, or you don't understand me at all, then we have a bit of a problem. This course is not an English course, it's a teaching course. So I will talk a lot about English and how to teach English, but I'm not really teaching you grammar and how to speak, if you know what I mean. Are you motivated enough to deal with the tasks? There's one essay part where you have to write essay. You need to write self-evaluations after you've taught. You need to write a lesson plan, you need to prepare materials. There's a lot of things that come with it. Things that could be fun, right? If you like, especially with the teaching practice, it's kind of exciting. But if you feel like, yeah, I'll just come to class, I don't have time to do anything besides that, then I really think you should wait until you do have the time. Because not doing the homework also means you cannot pass the course. Do you want to make a change in the educational system? Are you tired of how things are going? Would you like to see it go differently in any way? And this course is a very good beginning. We're going to look at language teaching very differently. And I have students here that have more than 20 years of teaching experience, 25 years of teaching experience, and they're like, wow, I've never thought of it that way. It's very interesting and very interactive. Do you want an internationally recognized certificate? Do you want to be able to, go somewhere and also be able to get a job? Those 4 things, if you say yes to all these, then this course is probably your course. If you have none with one of them, then I think we should talk personally and see if we can deal with it. You don't need previous teaching experience. It's a course that deals with absolute beginners. And it's preferred, but you do not need a bachelor's degree. This is a bachelor's level in the United States. In the United States, certain colleges will give you credit. Unfortunately, in Bologna it doesn't. But you get the idea at what level we are working. And your results are, well, the obvious internationally recognized teaching certificate. I'm not going to go into that. New knowledge and new experience about teaching. Like, it's fun if you've done something for a while and you look at it differently, but it's also fun to have more confidence before you start teaching. More confidence in the classroom, like I said. You feel like you're a step ahead of the competition, basically. You are able to use English as a means to teach English. So no more translate, no more Mongolian. I'm an English teacher. English is my profession. And English is what I speak. And the last, more job opportunities, both here and abroad. Like I said, with this certificate, you are a step ahead of the competition in Mongolia. Career development, absolutely. It's just one step further. And thank you very much. Do you have any final questions?
How many hours is the course and how long does it finish and what are the teaching hours?
6 weeks. We're a total of 180 academic hours, which is divided into 5 hours a day on Monday to Thursday and 8 hours on Saturday. Yeah, 9 o'clock to 2 o'clock, including a very hefty lunch break. Depending on, if I get a lot of students, then teaching practices just tend to last a bit longer, and that will stretch the course out a little bit. But we try to keep it within 6 weeks.
Will you provide us teaching materials?
You get a book which has a lot of information, but when you have to teach, you prepare your own teaching material.
Where can I get a job if I have a certificate?
Well, basically anywhere. I mean, possibility is basically anywhere. I mean, it is even accepted in Europe as a teaching degree. However, you need to keep in mind your background, the visa restrictions. If you think, I'll get this certificate and I'll work in Europe, it's very unlikely that the European Union is going to hire an English teacher from Mongolia when we can just get one without visa restrictions from England. But having said that, I mean, as a Mongolian, I think in Asia there's definitely opportunities. The Chinese market is huge. The Korean market is really big. Japan, in a way, basically every Asian country is looking for very qualified, near fluent or near fluent English speakers. So if you have a high degree in English, for example, a very high level TOEFL, CAT, IELTS, and you have a Tesol certificate, I have no doubt that there is a job out there for you. But the chances, I think, for Mongolian natives are a little bit, it's a little harder for you guys because of visa restrictions and all. But to answer your question, you can get a job in the jungle of the Congo in Central Africa, because even there the teaching certificate is valid. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you.